Welcome to the lockdown mindset, responding flexibly to the new realities or the emerging realities. I wonder if we can start with a little tech check and just say yes if you can hear me. Maybe you want to say where you're calling from, because we'll be very much we're UK based, but I realize there are people calling from other countries and what's going on there might be different. So, okay, UK, and Jersey, hello.
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland, thank you. If you can, US, San Francisco. Hi, Alina. Yasmina in France, welcome. So, wow, we've got Yucatan. Tamila, hello. So, sorry, I can't. If you can put it, use the chat for now, so that it doesn't get confusing. Reading, UK. Okay, Reading. We know Reading. Great. So you can hear me. Fantastic. Katharina in London. Hello, Tatiana. Hello. Wonderful. We had about 100 people. I think 98 people last time I looked sign up. So to me, that's just shows that people are ready. We're ready. We're not paralyzed. We are ready. We're ready to meet whatever we need to meet. And I'm really inspired by that. So thank you. I think I am recording, which is great. So people who aren't here can get the replay and hopefully benefit from the fantastic insights we're going to unearth together. I want to introduce Aidan Kearney, my facilitator this evening, in a moment. And I want to start by maybe inviting everyone who's here to acknowledge your commitment to being present and to creating a window of time in your busy day, busy period. I mean, hopefully you have a bit more time being at home and working remotely or in a distributed way. Apparently distributed working is the better term than remote working, because remote implies that there's the center and then you're remote. But actually, if you're distributed, it just means we're distributed. Anyway, so if you want to just make sure that you're not distracted by anything, any tech devices, you can put them aside if you can, unless you need them for whatever reason you need them. And just come into this room together. We're learning to create virtual spaces together. So just feeling the ground underneath your feet and the chair supporting you. Maybe acknowledging any feelings or sensations you're experiencing in this moment, just to bring you into the body and into the present moment. Just leaving aside all the noise, all the news, all the questions, the concerns that are occupying us at the moment. And just for the next 90 minutes or so together, seeing what we can create, what we can co-create together in terms of insight. And Aidan and I will share some of our own insights, having spent a lot of time thinking about this and bringing our perspectives as professionals, thinking about what's going on and where do we go from here. And I wonder if you might say, well, what were you doing just before this webinar? Just before you got on here, I'm kind of curious as to, we're all shifting our lifestyles and the way we work and live. And what were you doing just before now? I think I cooked this afternoon. Yasmina cooking as well. Oh, cooking. 3 of us were cooking. Reading a book, kids' tea time, writing, working. That's always good. 11K run through the countryside. Wow. Katerina went for a walk. Tatiana, virtual coaching session. Alina working. Sarah, creating content for new online programs. Exciting. Tamila in another webinar on how to increase the improve the immune system. Ashil working, shopping for groceries. hopefully only once a week, according to the UK government. We should try and minimize. Walking and cooking. Isn't it fantastic? So the companies that are ahead of the curve around this apparently are willing to organize themselves around, or at least acknowledge and honor the fact that we all have different rhythms. And they're not working on a factory-based model where we have to show up 9 to 5 and be there and do certain things all day. They recognize that in a knowledge economy, most of us, probably all of us, are in the knowledge economy. For our brains to perform optimally, we have to honor the rhythms of our body. So if you work better in the morning, then work in the morning. If you work better in the evening, great. If you need to cook in the middle of the day to just perform, then fantastic. So my hope is that we transition to that soon. What else do we have? Syra, walking and cooking at the same time. Elena, trying to mobilize supplies and help a distillery source products to create hand sanitizer. Yeah, it's like, thank you for doing that. Beverly, I found myself coordinating a group of 300 wanting answers from the government. Yeah, wow. Nav, trying to get online. Sanella, sneaky run in remote park. And Parmvir just joined. Well, welcome, Parmvir.
Thank you.
Make sure you mute yourselves. So, and then unmute yourself if you want to speak. That would be great. Thank you. All right. So we're in a big shift. We're going through a big shift, and we'll all be in different stages, and different people around us will be in different stages, right? So there's the emotional cycle of change that we go through, where we might start with denial or being overly optimistic and realizing the scale of things. I certainly I had a day of denial, I think, at the beginning. And then there might be a period where we have absolutely no idea what we're doing, but that is also where the most brilliant creative ideas can come through. And I'd like to think this is the kind of space we're creating. Maybe we don't know, but we're going to figure it out. Ideas are going to come through as we sit in the discomfort. And then we start to create and implement a new reality emerges. I want to say something about what I do in case you don't know. I'm Dr. Aitsi-Selmi. I am a public health doctor by background, but I took a career leap into transformational coaching 4 years ago and transitioned to completely one-to-one online coaching. So I've been working online and from home for 4 years now, which is very different to what I used to do. I was working in a very fixed structure and had to be on site. And I help professionals, doctors, to figure out if they're feeling stuck, where they want to go next, how to create the career and the life that they really want. And I want to introduce Aidan. I'm just going to read his bio here, but he's a very dynamic, very positive performance psychologist, and we met in Jersey. We were both speakers at a conference, the Leaders in Wellbeing Summit that's set up by Beverly, who was here today, and who's doing fantastic work supporting organizations to transition into healthier work cultures. So I'm sure you're very busy right now, Beverly. And Aidan works with individuals, businesses in the public sector, but also in elite sport. And he brings principles of applied psychology to life, helping them to perform under pressure, manage stress, communicate effectively, build strong, cohesive teams, and develop leadership behaviors. And the thing we have in common is that, and maybe other people on the call do as well, especially if you're a coach, is to take people a level deeper than the day-to-day routine habitual thinking, because it's the deeper assumptions that really drive our lives. And while it's okay to keep running on them, for a period, there come points in life where we have to question the assumptions that we're running on. So we're sort of passionate about helping people to dive deeper into those deeper layers of thinking and see what assumptions are limiting our capacity to fulfill our true potential and to do what we're here to do. And with the big shift with the pandemic, obviously there are new possibilities, and maybe you're seeing new ways of doing things, new ways of working. Maybe you've got ideas for products and services that you want to bring into the world. And like everyone else, there might be doubts coming in, limiting beliefs, and we want to help pulverize those limitations so you can do your thing. All right, so any questions, comments? Just checking the chat here. And then Aidan is going to tell us a little bit about some of what's going on. One of the emblematic moments has been the toilet roll race. And I'm not sure I understand fully what it's about. I know that in these times we all seek comfort. And so maybe the toilet roll represents, you know, it's the emblem of comfort in our societies today. And so we just want that comfort. And so we're just going and grabbing the toilet rolls. And then there's a negative feedback loop because of scarcity psychology. So you see something's missing and then you want it too. Not you necessarily, but one. So Aidan hopefully is going to explain some of what's going on from a psychological perspective and anything else. He's got some very interesting observations that he's made watching people in this period. So if you have any questions right now, it'd be a great time. Any comments? Yes, the toilet roll struggle is real. Absolutely. I use it as an indicator of the public mood. Okay, so I don't see any questions. And so Aidan, are you able to come online, come into the Zoom room?
Absolutely. Hi. Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hey. Hi, Aidan.
Welcome along to the my portion of the webinar. And thanks for the very, very kind introduction, Amina. Thank you also for attending and hopefully contributing to the next hour or so. We find ourselves in a very peculiar dispensation. The world has shifted very dramatically under our feet in the last number of weeks and months. And there are things happening that may well have been predicted and indeed were expected perhaps by science in terms of the manifestation of a global pandemic. However, it has now come to pass and we now find ourselves right slap bang in the middle of it. So thinking about what we have in our arsenal to understand, well, what's happening to us, what's going on around us, and how do we make sense of not only what we're thinking, but what is driving other people's behavior at this critical time can be very useful for us, not just to get us through the next period, but then also to learn the lessons from, to take forward, and to be able to think about how we apply those skills as we move forward, leading ourselves personally, so personal leadership, but then also collectively leading communities, leading businesses, and venturing into new arenas and adopting that entrepreneurial mindset that Amina has talked about. So the first place I wanted to start was with the thing that helps us navigate, or perhaps at times not navigate so easily, the challenges that we face around us. And we're fortunate that we've all got one of these things. It sits inside our head and it's called the human brain. And human brain is an absolute marvel of evolution. It's an absolute wonder of the universe. It really, truly is. The problem is, if we don't understand it, we can make some assumptions about how it functions, how it operates, what it enables us to do, and what happens when perhaps agendas that live within our heads express in behavior or express in feelings or emotion. So if we look at the human brain, it's useful to break down this complexity into something which is much more digestible and understandable. And for that, I would ask you to think about really two systems inside your head. That's it. In its overarching complexity, the human brain is phenomenal. You know, trying to understand it, the lead neuroscientists in the world acknowledge that the ground constantly shifts underneath their feet. However, certain principles exist that we know run true right across the piece. So let me introduce you to two component parts that you'll be very well aware of. Number one is the thinking process, which helps you to navigate complexity, to make evidence-based decisions, to problem solve, to think about the future, and to manage all of the challenges that you have on a day-to-day basis in your life, or perhaps even in your business. And that area is centered around the dorsolateral and ventromedial prefrontal cortex. It's this bit here. 40% of the adult human brain sits at the front of the human brain. And it's great for all of these complex, flexible thinking processes. Fantastic for overcoming challenges. But there's another very, very important part of the brain. And again, an absolute wonder of evolution. Nature in its wisdom has created something absolutely beautiful that sits within our brain, and it lives about here. If I was to instruct you how to access it, if you took two pens and you placed one at the side of your nose and one just around the top of your ear, where those pens intersected in your head would be just about where the amygdala sits. And you've two of them, one on either side. So you've two amygdalae, and they form a part of your limbic lobe. And the limbic lobe is there to keep you alive. It's there for survival. It's there for fight, flight, and freeze. So if you're thinking about the times when you felt very fearful or anxious or worried, that's this system in action. And it's a very, very powerful system. So I've just talked about an emergent and real global pandemic, a health crisis, a health emergency. If we put our understanding and simplistic understanding of human thinking together with those words, pandemic, emergency, and health crisis, it can be easy to understand that people are responding with some of this fear reaction, some of this amygdala or limbic hijack, the capacity for our brain to override our logical, rational thinking. Amina has already talked about the scarcity psychology, or as we'll talk about in a second, the scarcity heuristic. All of these shortcuts, all of these navigational tools that we have to see us through life really help us to navigate complexity. We don't have to approach everything brand new on a daily basis. Our brain is very good at learning and logging experience and using that for what we have, what we encounter and what we're confronted with. The problem is if we look at something like the loo roll struggle, and I know the loo roll struggle is real because I've stood in a supermarket and observed this. The reality is that the scarcity heuristic, it's something which is used by marketing psychology as well, around things like Black Friday, to generate people to behave in a certain way, to buy certain things. If we have a heightened sense of fear or worry or concern, driven by an element of amygdala activation through the understanding of heightened crises, heightened hijack or heightened pandemic and emergency. And we're getting all of these messages which we're pulling in and trying to make sense of on a regular basis. Then, if we go into the supermarket and the shelf, as I have seen, and this is an enormous supermarket where the shelf was completely stripped bare of toilet roll, the scarcity principle, the scarcity heuristic can easily come into play. And actually what it does, just like marketing psychology, it drives amygdala action. It drives fight, flight, or freeze response. It drives that survival response. Well, there's none left, or there's only one. I must have that now. The problem with this is that it has the capability and the opportunity to narrow our thinking. So if we think about facing a threat, and let's put it in the context of a very dangerous animal in front of you, where would you want your concentration, your focus, and your attention to be? Obviously on the dangerous animal, because you want to observe it, you want to keep it in line, you want to be able to understand what its actions are and be able to respond in kind, whether running away, freezing and hiding, or very rarely would you fight the dangerous animal because you're more likely going to lose. But if we think about that and apply that to where we find ourselves at the minute, then that same limbic hijack can really drive forward that survival response in relation to things that ordinarily we take for granted. We take for granted that there's toilet roll when we go into the supermarket. So it's unsurprising to see that there may be a heightened sense of that amygdala-driven survival, fight, flight, freeze response around these articles based upon perceptions of scarcity. And that's where the perception comes into play. Because we don't look at the world like a TV, and I'm showing my age now, a TV and a video recorder, a VCR, right? I'm going way back in the day. We don't look at the world like that. We are not an information intake, process, and feedback. The key thing is we process the information when it's in there. And for that, a lot of what we use to process that are the lessons that we've learned from the past and how we've laid down those heuristics, those shortcuts, those lessons that we know how to help us through all of the complexity that the world is. The other aspect that I want to really explore and talk through is the fact that when our friend in here, our amygdala, our limbic lobe hijacks us, it can freeze out our flexible thinking. Now, an anecdotal observation of this is when I stood in that supermarket and there were two young girls who were putting the other toiletry and paper items out on the shelves. And I looked at the people stood agog, transfixed almost by this empty row of shelving. And I said to the two girls, I said, how long have those shelves been like that? They said, oh, about 3 days. My next question was, because I was thinking flexibly, I wasn't in panic mode. I said, do people not realize that you're putting lots of tissues, wipes, and kitchen roll out on the shelf right behind them? And they said, funny, we just said that to each other. So the narrowness of our perception can be driven by that amygdala, that limbic hijack moment. And we can lose the flexibility in our thinking, that great capacity that we have to overcome problems. And this is not just the complex, really involved problems that we might face in the world, we might face in business, but it's also the day-to-day problems. Like, well, if there's no toilet roll, what else could I use? If there's no pasta, what other staples might there be? And exactly the same principle sat there when I looked at the pasta aisle. No pasta, people transfixed and agog, and yet lots of rice, lots of noodles, couscous, quinoa, lentils, and lots of other staples. And unsurprising, as you might learn from my accent, from where I'm from, lots of spuds, lots of potatoes, yeah, which I love. So I was quite happy when I was in the supermarket. It's recognizing that our perceptions play into how this system, how this wonderful 3 pounds of matter work, that's really important. So if we perceive that there is a shortage, that there is a scarcity, and we haven't listened to and we haven't processed the information that there's plenty in the supply chain, then we may be driven by that scarcity principle, that scarcity heuristic. We may be driven by more amygdala heightened activity, more fight, flight, freeze, survival response. The key thing to recognize is that what's happening now and what's happening in supermarkets happens to each and every single one of us on a regular basis, based upon how we perceive, how we engage with the world, and what our expectations are. So very often our expectation of approaching something can leave us feeling nervous, anxious, worried, perhaps stressed. And what that is telling us, if we listen to the physiological, the biophysical and biochemical feedback, it's really telling us that our limbic system, our limbic lobe and our amygdala is in action. And what it's doing is heightening our stress response. And what that can do is narrow our focus. So as opposed to seeing all of the other paper in the supermarket and seeing all of the other staples, we become transfixed on the toilet roll or lack thereof. We become transfixed on the pasta or lack thereof. So this is an important lesson, not just for dealing with all of the challenges that we face at the minute, but also the challenges that we will go on to face as this crisis starts to unwind and life, in whatever frame, gets back to some kind of normality. So it's really interesting to think about that and then think about, well, if you've talked a lot about heuristics, you've talked a lot about shortcuts, Aidan, how does that play into course? And the reality is that, as I've said already, the world's very complex. We make sense of it through processing, learning, and laying down neural pathways, memories, learning, skills. Those help us to do very complex things. The classic example is learning how to drive a car. The first time you get in, your amygdala, your limbic lobe is heightened, you're highly stressed, and it becomes or seems like a very difficult thing to do. Now, when you get behind the wheel of a car, if you're an experienced driver, you're not actually focused on all of the complexity. You handle the complexity very easily. And that's very good. That can help us. The problem is each one of us is an individual, and each one of our individual experiences informs how we process and lay down our experiences, our neural pathways, our memories. Each one of our experiences is different because we perceive it from a slightly different point of view. So when you start to look at how these multiply up, then you understand that we can see things from very, very different perspectives, albeit that we are looking at the same thing. How this feeds in then to informational bias and cognitive bias in decision making is that actually the shortcut that we have may cause us to miss some of the information. We may miss the wood for the trees. We may not listen to or attend to some relevant information because we're transfixed on the absence of the toilet roll. So when we look at this on a global perspective, it's very interesting to look at the information which is being passed to and the insight which is being given to people like Cobra at the minute, because some of that is about how you help people to move through these types of environments. And you have to give them very specific messages which are well-rounded, have a well-developed reason for them, and have an outcome. Now, we probably all know this. This is pretty simple stuff. But from a behavioral science standpoint, it's very, very powerful and very, very important. So, just as I'm coming to round out my little piece, what I would say is if you're in the supermarket and you feel yourself being drawn to the absence of something on the shelf, stop. recognize it for what it could be. It could be your limbic lobe or your amygdala in action, hijacking you. Think about the scarcity heuristic. Take a step back and start to widen your thought process out again. Start to learn the little cues that your system tells you when the thought process or the vision or the capacity to think is being narrowed, is becoming a slightly bit more rigid and a slight bit more inflexible. And then stop and ask yourself, what other information might there be? Take a look around, take a couple of deep breaths, and just slow down a bit. You'll see the PDF that Amina sent out before the webinar, and the principles that sit within that are drawn from the hot thought record in cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's about starting to map and then examine and then reframe our thinking based on other evidence. So bear in mind that we've all got this 3 pounds of grey and white matter inside our head. It's brilliant. I love the human brain. The problem is, if you think you can control it, it can do very, very funny things that you don't want it to. So learn the principles, harness the skills, and manage this thing. Because when we learn to manage it, it really can become our best friend. It can become a very powerful ally and can help us to overcome even the challenges and the complexity that we face at the minute.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That was so insightful and so full of information. I wonder if anybody has questions. If you want to ask about something related to what Aidan said, either from a personal perspective or from a work perspective, please put it in the chat, and I'm sure Aidan will be happy to answer. I love the expression you used about neural struggle, and that in a is like this idea that in a neuron to neuron battle, that more primitive brain is going to win usually because it's more ancient. So what can people do at a time like this when there are lots of reasons to feel a little bit of anxiety or fear or frustration? I'm sure many people are feeling the ups and downs one way or another. What would you recommend?
Thanks, Amina. So when we're feeling these struggles, there are, and by the way, these struggles are normal. They are absolutely perfectly normal. You're not losing your mind. It's absolutely perfectly normal. We are in a very challenging and a very unusual circumstance at the minute. So to have that heightened sense of fear, trepidation, stress, and worry, it's normal. That's the first thing. Recognize that and understand it. Number two, start to chart when your system activates. Learn what is activating it, what is causing the hijack, what are the cues that are starting to tell you, whoa, hold on, I think I feel a hijack coming, I think I feel heightened amygdala or limbic activity coming. And that could be physiological responses like an accelerated heart rate, maybe a flushed face if you're starting to blush. It could be shallow breathing, rapid breathing. It could be sweating. It could be that sense of feeling an emotion. And bear in mind, an emotion is, the emotions that we talk about are just labels that we're putting on the responses that we're having. It could be feeling an emotion like perhaps anger or fear. And not starting to chart what that feels like for you. So understanding that it's normal, understanding and starting to map and chart what it feels like whenever this system activates, and then starting to use, first off, behavioral principles to help yourself calm down. So tapping into deep controlled breathing, which can help you to calm the system, which can help to calm the physiological mechanism, which is feeding into that stress response. And then recognizing it for what it is. Now, it might be that you have to step away from the scenario for a little bit to let the system calm down. It might be that you can bring in another more helpful emotion at a time like this, and use this judiciously, by the way. At a time like this, when feeling fearful or stressful, comedy can be a great release, but share it in the wisest way possible. For example, the one thing I wouldn't extol is if you're having an argument with your significant other, to start laughing in their face, because that could really go down the wrong way. But using humor and using positive emotion in the right way to help counterbalance how you're feeling. And then once the system has calmed down, ask yourself what was really going on there. Ask yourself, okay, what was I thinking? What was the evidence for that? How did that make me feel? Use the flexibility of this bit, this 40% of the adult human brain, to then search, once the system has quietened, for other evidence streams. And think about, well, what else might have been going on? What other evidence sources could I look at? What other evidence streams could I look at? And then weight those two piles of evidence and ask yourself, when you say, well, what I thought at the time was not entirely accurate because I missed out on some information. And I recognize that because my thinking had become slightly rigid, flexible, and narrowed. But when I added the additional information, it changed my perception and perspective of what was happening. Then reflect on that and allow your brain to start, as you use active reflection, use that to help you prepare for the next time that you might encounter a circumstance like that. It's just like warming yourself up for the day ahead, or warming yourself up for some athletic performance. Reflection and preparation.
Great. And I think it's worth reminding everyone that deactivating the limbic hijack, or this mechanism, survival mechanisms that narrows down our focus to just get the toilet roll, is why it's important to increase self-care and any sort of self-awareness or spiritual practices that people have, because presumably that helps to deactivate that by reassuring the system that it's okay, we have our survival needs met, we've got sleep, we've got good food, we've got exercise, we can move, we're free, and exercise got all sorts of other positive properties, and we are connected, we belong, we've got our tribe around us, and it's fine.
And that's another important thing to think about. I mean, it's the elements that we need. So the core, if we look at it from a psychological standpoint, the psychodynamic drives, which are important to us, and that could be affiliation, or it could be family, or it could be a sense of security, a sense of certainty. All of these very important things, to which intrinsic and very deep anxieties can be tied, are very important. If we can find ways to helpfully address those, they can help keep our system in good stead. I just noted that Trevor asked, or somebody asked.
Yeah, there are a few questions. So Faisal asked, he said he liked the principle of harnessing assets, and could you list some of its assets? And I'm not sure, do you remember what that was referring to? Was it the brain?
Okay, so it may well be about the flexibility of thinking, the capacity to problem solve. And it speaks to some of the chat that's going on just down the side, perhaps. The evidence for people using this big bulbous part of the human brain, the 40% of the adult human brain, is all about our capacity to problem solve, to make sense of complex streams of information, to be able to process that and come out with an evidence-based conclusion. There's another way to think about it. If you've ever heard of the term executive functioning, this is where executive functioning lives. So it's all of those complexities of our ability to read, interpret, and respond to complex information, communication, and language. and all of those elements of our ability to pull the resources from other parts of our brain and to be able to come up with plans. So if we were thinking about what would I like to do whenever lockdowns finish and whenever isolations finish, and thinking forward for that, well, that's this part of the brain here. Bear in mind as well that our limbic region, our limbic lobe and our amygdala isn't doing anything wrong. It's not doing anything bad or untoward. It's trying its best to help you survive. It's not your foe. And the good part of this is where some of that excitement and color of life comes from as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for illuminating some of what we've been seeing. And I feel knowledge is power and awareness is power. And it also helps with compassion, because as we understand where other people are coming from, you know, maybe someone is just in limbic hijack. It enables us to meet people and situations with a bit more patience, and that can be so vital, I think, in these times. Yeah. So does anybody have a comment or an insight they want to contribute and they want to come online and share it before we get into more the response? So we're understanding, we're working on our self-awareness, we're working on our self-care. I want to take the conversation in the direction of mindset and strategy, and looking at how we start to adapt the way we think. So letting go of old assumptions around how we're supposed to work and how we're supposed to consume, and start looking at, well, how do we move into the new reality, both personally and collectively? And speaking to clients, speaking to colleagues and friends, I don't know if it's the people around me, but they seem to have this concern. I've heard quite a few people say, I'm fine. I'm calm. I feel quite calm. I can understand that there's a situation to panic about and that other people might panic about, but I feel okay. I even heard people say I'm excited about the new possibilities, because I think there's a lot of good change that could come. And then the question is how do you enroll people? How do you speak to the people who are still stuck in the old world or panicking? You know, what do you do? So does anybody have a strong intuition about what to do next, or a strong response to what Aidan said that you want to share in this space? Again, I want to keep this interactive. It's so easy to just get into lecturing and teaching mode, but I want to invite people to co-create this together. So let's see in the chat. Palmveer, hello. You seem to be the star of the show right now. You're on my screen in full screen. Can't see many faces. Yeah, I encourage you to come online and show your wonderful face if you can. Hello, Juliet. Thank you. Hi, Karen. Hello, Trevor. Hi, Amber. Hi, is it Ashir or Achilles? Akil, Jackie, hello. Helen. Hello. Chloe. Oh my goodness, it's been years. I think that's Anne, yes, I think it's Anne. Hello. Oh, this is so wonderful. I can't tell you the difference it makes. And if you haven't tested it, test it yourself, what it's like to have engagement, or people, humans, rather than just a screen. So thank you for your willingness to be visible. Tatiana, now, hello. Thank you for the big smile. Alina, hello. Joy, hello. So great, thank you. Palmveer, may I present my query by speaking? Yes, please do. So unmute yourself, Palmveer, and just speak your insight or your question.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, is my voice audible?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. And this webinar is really going great.
Thank
My
you.
query is, I and my sister are living away from my family. We're at a 4 hours distance. And because of this crisis, the curfew and the lockdown condition is there. And we are unable to go back to our families. But this situation is creating a lot of anxiety in with my younger sister, who is living with me, and my mother, who is away from us. And this is a kind of very different situation than the usual conditions, because it never happened. Although we have been living here since many months, and she was never so anxious about us being so away from the families. But this situation is making my mommy a lot of anxious, that how we are there, are we eating well, are we taking care of health, especially mental health. So how to deal with this thing, as I have made my mommy very convinced that we are very fine here, we're eating well, we are taking care, and I'm keeping myself busy with academics as well as the other things. But she's mother, she's very anxious. So please guide me how I can make her understand that things are fine here, and she should also take care of herself and should not think too much over it. Because I am very hopeful that things will be better in time, but I really want to make her feel comfortable that we are also fine, and she should also take care of herself, because this is the only way we can think of. So please guide me how I can take off. I can take. I'm getting very emotional this time.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for your honesty. And I want to, first of all, just acknowledge, that it is a difficult time. And
there is a lot of,
very confusing for all of us, really. And it's okay to feel that way. And there may not be easy solutions. And there might be small things that we work out together in conversation. And I was wondering where you were calling from, Pambir.
I'm from India.
Okay. So you're in lockdown as well, I think, or at least in some cities.
Yeah, there's a lockdown for 21 days.
Yeah. So maybe I want to tap into, I'll ask Aiden in a minute if he wants to come in, but I wonder if we can tap into the collective wisdom, because I'm sure everyone on this call is experiencing something similar with elderly parents or loved ones who are vulnerable, or people who are far away, or people who are anxious and maybe trying to draw on us for support. So please, if you have a contribution, please share it in the chat. I'm going to ask Aiden if he wants to come in a minute, and then if anybody wants to respond personally, you're also welcome to do that. So first of all, can you say yes if you also have parents who are worried, or you're worried about them? So I'm going to go first, because I want to say my parents are less worried than me, which puts me in a funny situation. So Pambi, can you see in the chat? Where have you gone? I think that's pretty much everyone. Aiden, do you want to respond with any practical suggestions or any help?
Sure. And I don't know if Pamber is still on the Zoom. If he is, and irrespective of whether he is or not, I'd like to share or thank him in his absence for sharing with us a very powerful, not an easy thing to do either. And the first thing I want to say is that this unusual dispensation, this peculiar circumstance, this health crisis that we find ourselves in, it's normal. It's absolutely perfectly normal to feel anxious and worried and perhaps frightened, and certainly to have that sense of anxiety for people who we care about deeply. if it is the case that we're speaking to someone and we sense their level of anxiety, we sense their level of worry, one thing to do, and it's a difficult skill to deploy at times, because listening to it might actually be a very challenging thing to do, particularly if that person is very dear to us. But give them the space in the room to express how they're feeling. Allow them to unpack some of the anxieties that they may have in their head. Allow them to get it out. We're familiar with the phrase or the term, get it off your chest. Right at the core of talking therapies, that's kind of the principle, allowing people to express, to get out, and to decompress to an extent that anxiety. And if we can do that and bring that level of compassion to our conversations, that can perhaps allow people to exercise that level of anxiety a little bit to make room for the other information that we may wish to give them. That yes, we are okay, we are looking after ourselves, and how we can provide evidence to allow them to process that. Within that as well, it's very, very important to recognize that we have to look after ourselves. We have to identify the little things, as Amina said, the little steps that we can take from a day-to-day basis, not just to be compassionate to other people around us, loved ones, but I would suggest the entire community. And certainly for me, compassionate to people within the NHS and other core workers who are out there doing very, very vital jobs to help all of the rest of us get through this. But also be compassionate to yourself. Understand that it's normal to have fears and worries and anxieties. It's a normal byproduct of being a human being, of having one of these things inside our heads. And if we can make small little steps forward every day to think about and plan forward to say, actually, what I'm going to do to help look after myself today is I am going to be more compassionate to myself and be kind to myself, and self-care for myself today is. And that might be touching base with someone, making an effort to communicate. It might be if you have a garden, to go outside and be able to sit outside for a while. And if that means being able to meditate or contemplate, absolutely. It might mean spending time and talking through your anxieties with someone else in your household and creating the space for those conversations to happen. Ensuring that when you do, they know what's going on, that all you want to do is get something off your chest so that you don't escalate an anxiety response within them and they feel more anxious about that. So set the parameters around those conversations, but have those conversations. Allow people to express, explore, and diffuse the anxiety. And that can make room for, okay, well, what do we do with it next? What do we do next? How do we move forward? Even with limited options, there are always options.
Thanks, Aidan. How are you doing, Parmveer? Make sure.
Thank you so much for the suggestion. And
we can't hear you, but I can see also there are quite a few responses in the chat, Parmveer, if you want to have a look at those. I think the self-care element is as important as the caring for others. They're like the wings of one bird, two wings of one bird. And we have to somehow find the balance. Each of us has to find the balance. If you're one of those completely calm people, then you have an extra role to play because you can hold space for others. If you're feeling the limbic hijack, then the work is to find ways to care for yourself, to deactivate the limbic hijack. And I always recommend the HALT tool, which is taken from 12 steps to people I work with and coach, which is don't make any decisions. Don't think about anything. Don't try to figure anything out until you've taken care of these 4 things. Halt. So are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? Make sure you've taken care of those before you try and figure anything out. And luckily that coincides with kind of general public health or health recommendations, which is look after your sleep, your diet, exercise, and connect. Make sure you connect. And I like to discern connecting with self. So through meditation, for example, just coming back home, connecting with that still, calm refuge within, and connecting with others. But you've got to be careful that you connect with others with the appropriate intention. If you're in hijack, you need to say, I'm in obviously that's a bit strange saying that, but in the future, maybe we'll say, hello, I'm in hijack right now. I need some hijack support. Are you available? And your friend will say, sure, I'm completely relaxed and open right now, and I'm available to support you. And that avoids so much miscommunication and misunderstanding, because if you're both in hijack, there's going to be trouble. I see Aiden nodding. So that's a little tool, halt, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And I wonder if this is a bit of a segue also in how we shift our mindset in general. So moving from the old industrial, more employee-focused sort of mindset of I go to work and people pay me and I know my salary is coming in and people tell me what to do and I do it and I get paid. Versus the entrepreneurial mindset, which is all about dealing with uncertainty and creating, not just in the midst of uncertainty, but from the uncertainty. Because the uncertainty means there are lots of different possibilities. And so you have to sort of develop an appetite or an acceptance for the uncertainty and know that that's where your most brilliant ideas are going to come from. And I've noticed there are sort of four fears that come when we take a leap into maybe something new or as an entrepreneur. And these are fear of uncertainty, fear of not having any guidance, not knowing what to do, fear of not having any structure, so not knowing where to start or what to focus on or when to stop, and fear of aloneness and loneliness. And yet, this is what we're being asked to face within ourselves. We're being asked to step into a new way of being and working. This is the new mindset that you can find in entrepreneurs, but you can also find it in people who, many of you have gone off and done your own thing. Maybe now or maybe in the past, you probably would have faced those fears. And so I think we're called to work out our own ways and also do it collectively. If we let go of the old work culture, what's the new one? Can we work it out together, knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable? And it's okay. And certainly something that's helped me focus my energy when the fears come and visit. There are lots of mindfulness tools and things we can talk about again, but I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's focusing on self-care and then service. So I care for myself to make sure I've got fuel in the tank. And then how do I help? Where am I needed? And it doesn't have to be, I need to go and solve, you know, the mask crisis, the face mask crisis, or I need to, you know, find the vaccine. It can be, do I need to call my mother? Should I call my mother? Because I know she was worried yesterday. Or do my pets need me? Are they afraid? I don't have pets, by the way. And I'm sure those of you who have kids have got all sorts of priorities that you need to take care of. So I'm just going to check the chat. Yolanda's here. She's an expert in emotional freedom technique. So it's a somatic technique where to help calm and deactivate the limbic hijack. Aidan, I don't know if you want to come in with anything at this point. I'm just having a look at the chat.
Yeah, I do see lots of good, sensible, and consistent messages. And just as Amina was talking about, those core needs, those needs of, are we feeling hungry, satisfying, sating ourselves? Are we feeling angry? So do we have an internal emotion which needs to be dealt with? Loneliness is a very interesting one, because we see lots and lots of expression here about connection, about using and harnessing what we have in front of us, technology, to be able to connect. And somebody said a very, very prudent thing on the thread just a while ago. It's maintaining physical distance, not social distance. Very, very sharp, good observation, because that's exactly what it is. A core human need, a core human psychodynamic drive is connection, relatedness, however it's expressed, understanding and being connected with each other. And the absence of that presents acceptance or rejection anxiety. And I'm sure we've all felt that somewhere along the way in our journey. And the reality is, if we can take small, simple steps to connect with each other, make a plan, ensure that we keep in contact with each other, that can be one way to address that on an ongoing basis and help with that self-care.
Awesome. So I'm going to suggest something a little bit different, because I think we have time. If you need to go, obviously we understand. If you can stay, great. A little exercise that hopefully is going to encourage that sense of connection and contribution. So the exercise is this. In pairs, so I'll hopefully work out the tech to help you to meet one other person on this webinar. It's going to be completely random. It might be someone on the other side of the world. It might be someone next door. I don't know. But the idea is taken from a Buddhist style meditation, which is to meditate on the fact that life is impermanent. Everything is impermanent, and we may not be here forever. Well, we won't be here forever. But let's say that, your time's up. You're going tomorrow, day after. And you're going to go feeling satisfied that you did everything that you wanted to do. So you're going to be happy. What's the one thing, what's the one message you want to share? And to share it with the person that you'll be speaking with. And it can just be, if you don't have a big idea, that's fine. It just has to come from the heart. It can be something that you experienced recently that led you to an insight. It can be a simple tip that really made a difference to your day or to someone else's day. I see people are dropping off because I'm imagining it's a little bit challenging to connect for real. And we don't have to do it, but I think in terms of the connection, it might help. Let's just get a show of hands. Is there anybody who wants to do this little exercise? Otherwise, we can cancel it. So just put yes in the box, and we'll see if there's a reasonable response. We've got a few yeses. Let's see how many people have dropped off. Okay, there's a few people. Okay, I think that's a reasonable. Aidan, do you think that's reasonable? I think it seems democratic.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the power of connection, being able to share with other people, and learn from other people is core to that.
Yeah. And really tune into yourself, because it has to be something that brings you a little bit of joy and a little bit of release to share it. And the person receiving it, please don't comment. Just receive it in silence. Notice the impact on you. Now, if you think, oh, I already know that, or that's not what I would say, that's fine. Those are just thoughts. Use mindfulness to notice the thoughts as they arise and go. You're just holding space for the person to share what they want to share from the heart. And then it's your turn. So we'll do that maybe 3 to 5 minutes each. So you don't feel it's too long, but it's not so short that you don't have time to take a deep breath and then share your tip or your insight. And remember, you may never see this person again. If you want to connect with people, remember you have the private facility in the chat, so you can just you can connect with people that way if you want to exchange details or anything like that. And Faisal made a comment about excitement and fear, and yes, excitement and fear have the same physiology, but they have different stories in the head, in the mind. So again, we as humans, our brain, our minds have this amazing capacity to observe itself. So you can observe the story and decide is it a useful story or not. If it's not useful, let it go. Okay. Any questions, comments, or strong objections? If you don't want to take part when you meet the person, say, I don't want to take part, I just want to have a chat and see how they feel maybe. This is all experimental, as you can see. All right, so can't see any strong objections. If you're not on video, that's fine, you can be on audio. All right, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and we'll meet again in less than 10 minutes. Good luck, and be real. Welcome back, everyone. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how uncomfortable were you? Be honest. Tatiana thought it was great. You're not afraid of discomfort, I know that. 0, Sarah loved it. Faisal was 8 out of 10. Amber 2. Helen really enjoyed it. Aidan, you enjoyed it, that's great. Who else? It was lovely, it was brilliant. It was great, all right. Oh, Palmvir, 100% uncomfortable. 100% comfortable, sorry. Okay, wow. So we have some very present, open hearts here. Thank you for being willing to play. Acknowledging that it was a little bit of a off-the-cuff improvisation and not necessarily well organized. So thank you for your patience and willingness to play along. Anyone want to share? And maybe you want to share what you heard from someone else. Maybe something you really appreciated or something that made you think. If you want to put it in the chat, or if you really appreciated it, come online. Small acts of courage. That's how we get to get through the discomfort. So anybody want to share online? Anybody want to get through fear of visibility? Don't wait was the message Jalek said. No?
Hi, everyone. This is Achille from France.
Thank you, Achille.
And I want to share with you the fact that you must never give up. And this is linked to my last experience, my professional experience, because I had decided last year to resign from my a very good job, yeah, a very good team, good salary, everything. But because I didn't find another job. People around me tried to convince me to stay, and they asked me, "Why do you want to leave? Did you find something else?" I said no, but I didn't feel very comfortable with my job because I didn't feel very recognized, in fact, for myself, for what I'm doing. And I need to be people to say, very good job, well done, or good job. That's not about money, but about something which can be very wealthy for my mind. So I decided to resign on last December, finally, and I felt so good, really good, and a little bit selfish, but I didn't tell people. And I took like 2 months just to do something I didn't used to do, and to read, to travel, to meet people, to make friends. And right now I have a new job. And during this coronavirus pandemic, I deliver foods like fruits and vegetables to people in France, in all the north area in France. And I feel really useful for my community. And
so congratulations, first of all. And I'm wondering, so what would be your insight or recommendation or tip to people who are right now wondering whether they should leave their job? Because obviously it's counterintuitive from the mammalian reptilian brain. It's like, no, I need more safety, I need more certainty. But if you flip it, it's also an opportunity to say everything's up for creation right now. So maybe it's time to finally say goodbye to that job. What would you say to people who are having doubts or maybe asking themselves whether they should do this?
I would say that life is short, then just listen to your heart. Because sometimes it's very difficult to explain why you want to live, because this is not logical to leave something when you have a very good job, a good team, everything. And people used to tell you to stay. So I'll just say what I can say, just listen to your heart. It could be very difficult, but at the end, if your decision, you make this decision, then you'll feel better. And right now, I really feel useful for my community. And when I watch the news on CNN or BBC, I smile because I say that every day, right now, every day, I'm useful for my community, for families, because they can eat because of me. They can eat a very good fruit. So listen to your heart, and after that, you will feel happy. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you. The possibilities are endless. So it's up to us to listen to our hearts and take our heads along.
Thank you, Anina.
Figure things out. So as we come to a close, Aidan, I'll ask you to come in with any final thoughts in a minute. And I want to thank everyone for being here, especially everyone who stayed till the end and who was willing to participate in what could be, felt as a very uncomfortable exercise. And hopefully you enjoyed it or learned something from it. And if you want to connect with us, we'll send you details in the follow-up email. We'll send you a replay. My coaching roster is full right now, but I'm devoting Monday afternoons to big shift conversations for people who want to talk about this, and trying to support you in the best way I can. It's complimentary. And Aidan, is there anything else you want to finish with? Obviously, I'll send you your details as well, your contact details. People want to reach out.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody who has been online. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for engaging. Some people have shared very personal stories, and that always makes me feel particularly special that people who I've never met before are willing to share their stories and their information with me. I suppose I would close out with the fact that we are in a very unusual, very threatening dispensation, very threatening environment, potentially. But we always have a choice, whatever happens. Whenever we get a thought, we have a choice about what we do with that thought. We can act on the thought or be more mindful and recognize that the thought is just a thought and choose our path. If I was choosing a path today, it would be a path of collectivism and kindness. And that's kindness to yourself, kindness to those people around you. And as Akil has shown, kindness through your actions and the job that you do by delivering important, vitally important services at a very, very crucial time.
Beautiful. Thanks, Aidan. So without any further ado, thank you again. And be you, be the wonderful you. And I look forward to staying connected one way or another. So I'll, maybe everybody, if you want to unmute yourselves and just say bye.
Thank you.
Bye from me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Keep safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, hey, Amina, is it me?
Hello.
Hi. Well, I touched base. I hope you've been well. Sorry, I've just been mega busy, but yeah, I hope you've been good.
Yeah.
Meaning to get back to you, but just had lots of stuff with the coronavirus, so been very delayed, but things are improving. I think life is, you know, things have kind of been working. Oh, sorry. Hi, Aidan. Sorry, I thought it was just myself and Amina.
No, I'm signing off now. I'll let you have a chat. So goodbye.
All right.
I'll see you in a moment, Aidan.
No worries.
Yeah, so yeah, things have been nice. So I'm feeling quite happy, and you know, things are coming together. So that's good. And reaching out to new networks and kind of, you know, learning from others professionally and being able to contribute my, you know, ideas and thoughts to different groups as well. So that's been very fulfilling.
Great. Well, that sounds fantastic. And this is the time.
Yeah, definitely. A friend encouraged me to join Instagram finally after 10 years.
Yeah. Well, there are three things I'm telling people right now as the shift, you know, the shift happens, and we move out of being told what to do, and all the deeper assumptions that come with that. Three things. What's your message that you want to share, and with who? What's your offer or your service that you want to offer, not through your organization, but you? And then what are the systems around that? What are the systems you want to put around that?
I feel that create a mind map to get all those things out, you know, in terms of
no mind map. So I think for you and for most people I work with who are generally very intellectual, ditch all the paper, ditch all the. It's listen for the simple statement that comes from deeper within.
I think offering.
If you're gonna say it immediately, it's probably not the thing.
Oh, okay. I'll need to think and come back in that case.
Something to sit with.
Okay.
It's probably not what you already know. Or it might be, there might be a wisp of it.
Okay.
But now is the time for all of us to bring more of who we really are out. Because nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So there's a lot of potential. There's a sea of potential. And while it's scary and uncomfortable, it's also an opportunity to create from scratch, from that deeper place. Yeah. How does that land?
I think it's quite demanding, but I guess it's good because I feel like I need to reflect more. There's lots that's happened in my personal and professional life over the last 2 years, and making notes, and I think, oh wow, so much has changed. You know, it's really, really interesting. So I guess for me, just reflecting, and I feel like I'm kind of wanting to reach out to other people, and social circles are changing somewhat. So it's, you know, I think there's a change is coming about.
Yeah. Remember, a new cycle implies destruction of things in the old world.
I think it's time now, actually, for certain things from, you know, 2006 or, you know, 2010 or what. Yeah, gosh, that's quite a while ago now. Yeah, that's plenty of time. Yeah,
A decade for you. New decade.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I'm more than happy for them to go now. You know, I think it's long overdue. So yeah, I'm more than happy.
Yeah. So, and by the way, if you want to book a conversation on the Mondays, that's what those times are for. If you want to just catch up and brainstorm a little bit, I'm happy to do that. One requirement: make sure you've really cared for yourself before you come into the space.
Oh, okay. I think I might need a bit of help with that, but thank you. Yeah.
And maybe that's the place that we might, you know, it might be beneficial to brainstorm. Are you really caring for yourself, or are you just running from one thing to another? And I don't know. You know best.
Rest a little bit more, but I have this sense that I always need to be doing stuff, and that's been there for the past, you know, for a while. So maybe
Okay.
Rest a bit more.
Great. So you're recognizing your pattern.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's good to kind of, you know, sit back and yeah, just kind of know what's going on. I think that's important.
Yeah, it's gonna be okay.
Oh, thank you. What's that? You'll be all right. Oh, right. Awesome. Yeah, I hope so.
And this is from the museum in Christchurch, where they had that awful earthquake that killed 300 people in a go and destroyed the city, and basically they're still recovering from that. So the local authority put that up to try and remind people it's going to be all right one way or another. Yeah, and so I'll is there anything else I can help you with today? Otherwise, I'll be sending an email.
There is, but I feel like it's more of a longer private conversation. But yeah, for the time being, I'm good and quite happy. So thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, don't hesitate to book a time that suits.
An email and then I book. Has it already been sent, or is it in the previous email? I'm just trying to think.
I'm going to send a follow up, so you can just.
I will do that in that case. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
All right. Brilliant. Yeah.
All right. Okay, Lai. Nice to see you. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.